it's unconstitutional. If Iran is not at war with the United States, President Trump would need to have the authorization of Congress to begin operations against Iran.
Britain, France and Germany and other members of the European Union have all rushed their foreign ministers to Geneva for talks with Iran in a desperate attempt to give peace a chance. It's now a week since Israel began its bombardment of Iran and carried out assassinations of Iran's top nuclear scientists and military commanders, with Iran firing hundreds of missiles at Israel in response. Now, in the last few days, the world's been holding its breath as Donald Trump has mulled over whether the US should join Israel's military action. Yesterday, we found out that he'll be keeping us guessing for another fortnight. Let's listen to what his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, had to say.
I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks."
Well, let's now speak with Thomas Countryman. Thomas is a former US Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Nonproliferation and is now chairman of the Non-Partisan Arms Control Association. Thomas, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Just let's start with your kind of sort of assessment on where things are right now between Israel and Iran.
Well, Israel and Iran are at war. It is clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu chose this moment for a variety of factors, but not least in order to sabotage what were ongoing negotiations between the United States and Iran. The question that concerns you and everybody here in Washington today is whether President Trump will have the United States join Israel in offensive actions against Iran. I sincerely hope not, for a variety of reasons that I'd be happy to go into.
Please do share those.
First, there is no immediate threat from Iran to the United States. This is Israel's war with Iran, and Iran is not attacking the United States or United States interests. Secondly, due to the Israeli attacks, there is no possibility of Iran advancing in the next few days in its nuclear program. Therefore, there is time to consider the situation. Third, it's unconstitutional. If Iran is not at war with the United States, President Trump would need to have the authorization of Congress to begin operations against Iran. And we are hoping to see an actual debate in the House and the Senate in the next weeks. And fourth, it is still possible for diplomatic negotiations to reach an agreement that verifiably prevents Iran from ever acquiring a nuclear weapon. And diplomacy should be the choice ahead of war in every instance. And finally, it's a big risk to American servicemen and civilian for the U.S. to enter another unwinnable war in the Middle East.
Well, thank you for setting out those arguments. I mean, the Israeli argument, and many of my listeners feel this way as well, they argue that, you know, Iran is very close to having this nuclear bomb. They feel that there is a real and present danger of attack from Iran. They feel that they already have this technology and they have the capability. What would you say to that argument?
First, Iran does not currently possess nuclear weapons. Israel is the only state in the Middle East to possess nuclear weapons. Next, Iran has enriched uranium to the level at which it is feasible to construct a nuclear weapon, but they have never done so before. And it is not an immediate threat in terms of days or weeks or even months for the time in which Iran may be able to construct a nuclear weapon. Trying to end Iran's nuclear ambitions by bombing is a fool's errand. You cannot bomb away the knowledge that Iran has gained. and unless you are committing Israel and the United States to years and decades of persistent attacks upon Iran, you cannot take away the knowledge, the experience they have gained in the enrichment of uranium.
So your view very much is that you do not believe that Iran is in a place now where, as another one of our listeners just messaged in saying, but what if Iran just nukes Israel? How many Americans would be killed? It's very much in America's interest to stop Iran. You would say to my listener that you don't think they've got that capability right now.
They absolutely do not have such a capability right now.
And look, we spoke with but okay, next question I suppose is, how far off are they of having that capability, and how do you feel about stopping Iran? I presume you don't want Iran to have this capability. How do you stop Iran from having this capability? Is it only through diplomacy, or should there be, I spoke with a former Defence Secretary, Jeff Hoon, former UK Defence Secretary. He said there's an argument you can't just, as you say, bomb your way out of this. If you really did want to shut down all the nuclear facilities, you'd have to have some kind of boots on the ground. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we did have the boots of International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors on the ground from 2015 forward, who were verifying that the previous 2015 agreement was being fully implemented by Iran up until 2019, after President Trump chose to violate that agreement. We can get back to that situation. It will be harder as a result of Israel's war of choice. It will be harder to reconstruct the knowledge that the International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors had. But Iran has said and has shown in negotiation that it is willing to agree to a permanent presence of such inspectors who are able to verify that the work is not going forward. That was the situation we had for 4 years. And we can get back to a similarly good situation or even a better diplomatic agreement.
Okay. And so, I suppose many people would think, Iran is a bad faith actor in the region, is a source of a lot of regional instability. Can you sort of trust Iran to go and do this through a diplomatic route?
Well, without question, Iran is a bad faith actor, and Iran thinks the same about the United States based upon the willingness of President Trump to violate previous agreements. But an agreement does not depend upon trust. It depends upon negotiating complex verification mechanisms. That's what we did 10 years ago. It can be done again. It's not about trust. It's about verification.
And look, what's your sense of what do you think Trump's going to do on this? He's talked about this 2-week window. Do you think he'll stick to that 2-week window? What do you think he's going to end up doing? And who do you think he's listening to?
Great questions. There are two statements that President Trump makes often that are always true. One is, I haven't read that, whether it's the Bible or the Constitution or an intelligence assessment. And two, when he says, nobody knows what I'm going to do. And I certainly don't know what he is going to do. It is a fact that we ought to take at least 2 weeks before making such a momentous decision, for the Congress to weigh in, for the efforts of European foreign ministers to see what is still can be salvaged from the interrupted diplomatic negotiations. I don't know who he's listening to. I hope that he understands the intelligence assessment of the U.S. intelligence community that Iran was not working on weaponization, on creating a nuclear weapon as of just a couple of weeks ago. The enrichment of uranium remains a serious concern, but it is a concern that we have demonstrated in the past can be addressed through the use of the IAEA inspection system.
And Thomas, what's your feeling about how what chance does diplomacy have in this situation? Because it doesn't feel like there's any sort of de-escalation on the cards. How confident are you that this kind of fortnight of diplomacy will yield any results?
Well, it's hard to have any confidence after the last several years of diplomacy have not yielded a result. But I am encouraged by the fact that the European foreign ministers, at least, are looking for an off-ramp for both the United States and Iran. There is nothing inevitable about a conflict between the United States and Iran. Obviously, we're past the point of hoping to avert conflict between Israel and Iran. But there remains space for diplomacy, and I never entered a diplomatic negotiation with certainty that we would succeed, but always with a determination to exhaust every possible diplomatic path before turning to violence.
Okay, well, look, Thomas, great to catch up with you. Thank you very much for your time. That's Thomas Countryman, former US Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Non-Proliferation. Oh, James is not happy. James is like, that guy has an agenda to protect his failed legacy with Obama. Thomas served under Obama. Obama's agreement failed to stop Iran covertly enriching uranium. They've clearly developed weapons-grade uranium. Iran should have no enrichment capability, not even for civilian use. Iran's been given too many chances. Well, look, I just think, James, clearly you have an agenda as well from your messages that you regularly send in. And, you know, I think this guy, whatever you think of him, the fact that he might have worked for President Obama, he does clearly know what he's talking about. He is quite an expert. He's somebody who is steeped in this. He's now chairman of the Non-Partisan Arms Control Association. So sometimes we do actually have to listen to experts as well as keyboard warriors on this.